The Zimbabwe Peace Project, in its damning 2025 report on the holding of by-elections in Gutu East and Insisa North constituencies and Shipinge Ward 5 and Binga Ward 4, alleged that the ZANU-PF party engaged in activities that disadvantaged opponents in the opposition camp, and by so doing infringed on the human rights of voters in these constituencies and wards. The Harare Post engaged a number of stakeholders to get their views on these allegations presented by ZPP. Let's hear what Gutu East ZANU-PF winning candidate Honorable Mashwingise had to say about the conduct of the elections.
ZPPC iri kushandisa kudava selective memory because havasi kuripota violence that was even perpetrated against ZANU-PF, against myself as a candidate, vachishandisa even instruments the candidate your opposition, and this violence is on record. All the processes zakaitwa, and it's on record and it can be verified.
The Harare Post engaged one of the losing candidates, Gift Gonese, who spoke over the phone.
Those guys from ZPP did not engage me. I don't know where they got their information to come up with such a report.
As stated earlier, the by-elections were also held in Binga Ward 4, and the Harare Post engaged Senator Rebecca Fanuel to ascertain what exactly transpired in the run-up as well as the holding of that particular by-election.
Nindawo eyanda bantu nindawo etambula bantu kuti wasiga ipinga eratambula po yenda mtu wose ino twakala ama elections akali kupinga akala muno takwe kuti wakalwana twaziba biyo kuti aba besi kubabona biyombuli bantu takwe mtu akaswana nakatwikulanga besi bambali kwamba kuti abamba ko so twayinkiride katu yoyimirira isanpira wali muno masabuko onse nditwakaswana tawe mtungu twakalwana onse alotegwa awa musenabwe opposition twali kujusika ndakapoto kusika buzwa kwakufuta tazowina.
Similarly, Minister of State for Matabeleland North Province, Richard Moyo, had no kind words for organizations such as ZPP that peddle falsehoods simply to impress their funders at the expense of nation building.
Yes, yes, akuthi kulamanye ama-organization asesola ethi ZANU-PF ibisethusela abantu ebhinga ayisikwe esakufundiswa i-Second Republic umongameli idim nangagwa asethusela umuntu thina siyakhampena siyenzele izinto abantu abazifunayo sicele epartini kumbe kuhulumende izinto abantu abakhala ngazo sibayenzele abantu bavotela into abayibonayo nothi izithembiso. ZANU-PF ikhuluma isenza namba abantu sebelamanzi ku-Ward 4 kwakungalamanzi and uchief wakhona senesigaba more than happy ngoba abantu bakhe sebehlale isikhathi esikhulu kakhulu bengalamanzi okunatha. So yikho esikwenzayo lokho ama-organization lawo bathola ngakho izimali ukukhuluma into ezinjalo bethi ZANU-PF yethusela abantu asila sikhathi sokwethusela abantu senzela abantu izinto abazifunayo.
In the Zimbabwe Peace Project report, ZANU-PF was accused of using traditional leaders to tilt the electoral playing field against opposition parties. The Harare Post engaged traditional leaders to get an understanding of the role of chiefs in the country's political landscape.
Nyaya ndati ndikurukure nemi muzwara nhasi inyaya ine maringe nezvesarudzo dzakasiyana-siyana dzinogona kuitika munyika yedu yeZimbabwe. Chekutanga, nyika yedu inofanira kuti iite ma-elections chero nguva inenge yakatarwa maringe nezvinenge zvichida kuti zviitwe, angave ma-council elections, angave ma-presidential elections, angave ma-elections ekusarudza vatungamiriri venyika, kunyangwe ma-elections ekusarudza madzimambo kuti aende kunomiririra mamwe madzimambo kudare guru rehurumende reparamende. Saka isu semadzimambo chekutanga senyika tine mitemo inotigavhena inotsanangura kuti mambo basa rake rinombova rei. Chekutanga, mambo weZimbabwe chekutanga haana bato raanorerekera kana kusapota kana kutapesu interest yemunhu ari kuda kuita sarudzo, angave webato ripi, ringave reZANU-PF, ringave reCCC, ringave reMDC, ringave reZAPO, any political party munyika yeZimbabwe. Mambo anofanana nemubereki. Baba vanozvara mwana wavo, havazvare muroi, havazvare mbavha, havazvare hure, asi baba vanongozvara mwanakomana nemwanasikana. Ndizvo zvinofanana nemaelections. Saka basa rababa nderei? Nderekutsiura vana kana vachinge votsaudzira. Kana mwana iri mhondi, ibasa ramambo rekuti konai mwanangu umondi wautorepi? Hatidi mhondi, uri mwana wandakabereka. Kana vana vachitamba havo mutambo yavo uku, baba vanongoona kuti vana vari kutamba mutambo vasina ruzha. Ibasa rangu samambo kuona kuti maelections kana achiitwa anoitwa murunyararo. Basa ramambo ndiri kuona kuti vanhu vanofanira kuvhota vakasununguka, vachisarudza bato ravanoda kuti vasarudze, vovhota murunyararo, murugare.
Given Chief Chikwaka's sentiments, Harare Post sought the legal view on what the country's statutes dictate with regards conduct of traditional leaders in the country's politics. The news crew engaged prominent legal expert Lloyd Machacha.
So, in terms of the Constitution, you would see that under Section 67, it provides for what are called political rights. And these are rights that are accorded to every Zimbabwean. And despite color, creed, gender, these are rights that are exercised by every Zimbabwean and subject to the Constitution. So when anyone is exercising within the confines of the law, anyone can exercise his political rights. But however, we hear some complaints where people are saying that there are certain sections of Zimbabweans who do not have political rights, and in particular we hear the issue of traditional leaders. So when you're looking at traditional leaders, they are governed under Section 280 and Section 281 of the Constitution, which specifically outlines that the traditional leaders are not supposed to be active participants in politics. But however, this, if you interpret or look at this clause, it speaks to traditional leaders in the context when they are wearing their jacket as a traditional leader. But remember, this is Zimbabwean. We have got opinions that he may align or he may not align with. So as they do their work as a traditional leader, they cannot participate in politics. But however, in their individual or personal capacity, that issue, I think when I look at it from in terms of Section 281, those rights have not been taken away with their Section 67 rights have not been taken away by Section 281 or Section 280 if you read it from the legal perspective. So for me, when I look at it, I respectively disagree with the proponents that suggest that to say traditional leaders' rights have been taken away, they do not have political rights. They are Zimbabweans who have got political rights, but of course when they are wearing their jacket as traditional leaders, they may not actively participate in politics as a traditional leader, but in their individual or personal capacity, I beg to differ from the other proponents.
Machacha's sentiments were further echoed by academic Dr. Tawanda Zinyama, who is a governance and public management lecturer at the University of Zimbabwe. In his views, ZPP took an unfortunate binary position simply to discredit the conduct of otherwise peaceful by-elections.
So we see the Zimbabwe Peace Project issuing or publishing a report which has made reference to violence, intimidation, bribery, and also partisan participation of traditional leaders in those constituencies. So I think there is a need for us to make the record straight and say, yes, the issue of elections is a constitutional right guaranteed and enshrined in our Constitution of Zimbabwe, Amendment number 20 of 2013. So what is more important here is whenever Zimbabwe has elections, be it presidential, parliamentary, even a ward councillor, we see organizations taking a binary position. It's either dismissing the results, failing to accept, and citing violence, intimidation, all sorts of things in order to discredit the whole process. That is very, very unfortunate. Why? Because Zimbabwe has a clear electoral infrastructure, which is solid, which governs the pre-election, the election period, and the post. So if there is anyone who is not happy or who feels that his or her electoral rights are infringed, there is a procedure that should be followed in order to get a redress or to resolve whatever electoral disputes. But we see in Zimbabwe there are organizations that decide not to follow that procedure. What should be the ideal situation according to the Constitution of Zimbabwe and the Electoral Act is that if there is an issue, electoral dispute, whoever is complaining must have adequate concrete evidence that can be produced before the courts and say, we are not happy with this position or the electoral outcome because of the following reasons. Then you lay out.
Elsewhere, the Minister of State for Matabeleland South Provincial Affairs and Devolution, Honorable Albert Ngulube, was not amused by the ZPP report as he noted that the country's electoral system accords any aggrieved individual or organization an opportunity to freely raise their issues in line with laid down statutes. And in the Insizwa North by-elections, no adverse reports were received.
The election was very peaceful. If anyone says it was not peaceful, that person is free or was free to report the issue to the police, and also ZEC, which was there. But as the Minister of State for Provincial Affairs and Devolution, I don't recall or I don't have any report in my desk which indicates otherwise. That I don't know where, if there ever is anybody who says the election were not free and fair, if ever there's someone who says there was intimidation, I don't recall. As far as I'm concerned, the elections were free and fair, and I'm sure those who were opposing us should gratefully accept that you don't win every day. You win and you lose, and you must just accept. In politics, you must just accept. And I don't see anyone winning that seat again, taking it away from ZANU-PF, because we are actually on the ground. We are implementing the mantra of the president that no place shall be left behind. As I'm talking, coming this week, I'm deploying 2 rigs to drill more boreholes, both for Insizwa South and Insizwa North. We are going to solarize all those boreholes. We are going to make sure that the village business units are operational. Thank you.
ZANU-PF winning candidate for Insizwa North, Honorable Delani Moyo, rebuffed Zimbabwe Peace Project assertions, highlighting that he won the parliamentary seat on account of ZANU-PF Development Trust, which allowed the electorate to endear with him favorably. He added that contrary to the ZPP report, there were no acts of violence, no intimidation that were registered in the Insizwa North constituency.
Ngawina okulesi sinto ngithanda ukubonga njalo ukubona kuma by election akuzange kube lodlakela kwaba lokuthula okumangalisayo. Yikho iZANU-PF yanqoba okulesi sinto. iZANU-PF libandla elinqobayo njalo lizahlala linqoba eInsizwa North ngemsebenzi eyenzakalayo, ngoba ngesikhathi sidinga usekelo ebantwini kulezinto esiziyenza ebantwini ezibambekayo. For instance, sidrile ama-boreholes amaningi kakhulu across the constituency ngesikhathi sidinga usekelo. Kulungiswe ama-roads, imigwaqo ilungisiwe, imisebenzi eminingi ezikolo sithengile izitina, izamente, ama-building materials amaningi, so abantu abavotelanga iZANU-PF ngengozi kodwa bayivotela ngemsebenzi abayibonayo isenzakala ngoba iZANU-PF yi-party ye-development.
To sum it all up, the Harare Post engaged the chairperson of Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, Jasima Jome, who noted that the by-elections were held in a peaceful manner, but certain individuals only dwelt on minor challenges disregarding the wholesome picture. She encouraged the cultivation of unity among Zimbabweans, highlighting that the country's independence was sacrosanct as it only came through a protracted war of liberation.
So as the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, we continue to encourage that respect and the tolerance because we are all Zimbabweans and we are, we all need each other and we're the same family really, and elections we must just hold them and we continue with our lives, and they should make our lives better. We should not hate each other because elections are the opposite of that. So we will continue encouraging that in monitoring and messaging so that we continue to keep on doing better, because we're doing well, but we can always do better and improve so that even come the next elections, people don't come to our country to observe expecting to see mayhem because they've been hearing about it. We think at the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission that if we just observe the dignity, the equality and the freedom of everyone, everything will go well. There's absolutely no need to be violent or to be intimidatory against any other person. The best candidate will win after all, because after all, Zimbabwe was born through a fight for voting and elections, because we were denied them before independence, the people of my color. So we should now proudly enjoy our democracy, because that is what many Zimbabweans died for. And so we encourage that. And because of that, we therefore monitor elections in Zimbabwe whenever they happen, by-elections and general elections. We recently monitored the by-elections that were held in Gutu South as well as in Siza, and also other elections before that, by-elections for councils in Chegutu, etc. So what we do so in order to promote human rights, because in section 67 of our constitution, it is guaranteed that everyone has a right, has political rights. They have a right to run for political office, campaign for office, support or oppose any political idea alone or with others. So that is a human right that is guaranteed. And that section 3, subsection 1, paragraph C of our constitution lays out the values upon which Zimbabwe is founded. And one of them is good governance, which in that particular paragraph is defined to specifically include a multi-party democratic system of government. So we monitor to see whether those rights are being observed. And when we monitor, we produce reports, we monitor, and we actually find out if we receive allegations of malpractices in elections. We go to the parties that are being alleged to have done them, and we find out if they indeed, what they have to say about it, and we make our own findings. And when we make our findings, if we find that there have been violations or electoral malpractices, we make recommendations to the various stakeholders, including the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, which is one of our, how can I say, family members in Chapter 12 of the Constitution to support elections and democracy, and to the ministries and to the parties that are concerned. And what we find is good is that Zimbabwe does continue to observe those political rights by conducting elections whenever they are due, and when they are due, and that in itself is a realization of rights. What we need to continue working for, from what we've observed in our monitoring elections, that a lot of the elections we monitor, by-elections, I will mention the by-election that was held recently of a council ward recently. It was that particular by-election was a joy to monitor. We found candidates doing exactly what it is they were meant to do. They were campaigning freely, respecting each other, being tolerant, and the supporters of the various players were also minding their own business and supporting and campaigning for their candidates in a peaceful and respectful way. And the polling was conducted in a good way. It was a peaceful election, no intimidation, and it met the purpose, that is for selecting leadership in a peaceful way.
There we have it. Relevant stakeholders in the documentary have utterly dismissed the Zimbabwe Peace Project's adverse report against the country's recent electoral processes, stating that the report lacks credibility. Meanwhile, divergent views from across the professional and political divide will serve as reference to ZPP and other like-minded entities who are relentless in their quest to besmirch the country's electoral processes. For those and other informative documentaries, make sure to view, like and subscribe to the Harare Post 8626 YouTube channel.